Okay, so we are in the middle of Parak Chamishi, the fifth parak of Pirkei Avos, in the middle of Mishnah Dalet. So we saw last time there were 10 miracles that Hashem did in Mitzrayim for the Yidden, and there were 10 Al Hayam, 10 miracles about the Yam Suf. There were 10 Makos that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave to the Mitzrayim and Mitzrayim, and there were 10 Al Hayam. So I think actually we saw the 10 miracles that Hashem did to the Yidden Mitzrayim, which essentially was for every Makkah, the Yidden didn't suffer from it. So naturally, it should have affected everyone in the area, but it didn't affect the Yidden. So that's 10 Nisim for the Yidden, and that's the 10 Makkahs for the Mitzrayim. Then there was a list of 10 Nisim that Nasu al Hayam, and we went through that last time. That each Shevet had their own little clear tunnel they went through. So the other Shvatim, the ground was dry. They could drink water. All the water turned hard, and except for the water that was drinkable, and that water they would drink. And whatever any leftovers would just like evaporate, or no, the leftovers would turn into ice and be pushed to the side, so the ground stayed dry. Those are the 10 miracles the Yidden experienced al Hayam. Then there were 10 Makos the Mitzrayim had al Hayam. That's what we're up to. So Vasar al Hayam says the Rabbeinu Yona Harishon, the first one Vayor es Halayla. So it says that Hashem when this is on the eve of the Shvi Shal Pesach, the seventh day. So the Yidden were in front of the Mitzrayim, and the pasuk says Vayor es Halayla. Hashem lightened up the night. Unclus is Matargim. So for the Yidden, it was light the entire night. They didn't have that fear. For the Mitzrayim, it was dark. Hashem kept them literally in the dark. And that was one of the Nisim, the Makkah. It was a Makkah that happened to them. It's interesting because really, at night it is dark. But Hashem made a miracle for the Yidden that it was light for them. That it was dark for the Mitzrayim is called a Makkah, even though it was just the status quo. They didn't receive the Nes. But that's the Rabbeinu, and it says Hasheni v'Hashlishi, the second and third v'Yashkev Hashem al Machin Mitzrayim ba'Amid Eish v'Ana. So Hashem, so to speak, threw at the Egyptian camp the Amid Eish, the fire, the pillar of fire, and the cloud. Anon Yored v'Oise Oise Ketit. The cloud would come down and moisten the ground, dampen the ground, make it like mud. V'Amid Ha'Eish Martichoi. And the pillar of fire would come in and boil it up. The Talfei Suseyim Mishtamtos. Mechilta says that the horseshoes, the hooves of the animal, of the horses, would like fall off. I guess it was like burning mud would like ruin the tlafim, the hooves of the horses. They would basically fall down with the riders on top. Harvi, the fourth miracle, the fourth makkah that happened to the Mitzrayim on Yam Suf, Yasser is oifen markavoisa. Hashem took off the wheels from the chariots. They're riding on the chariots, with the horses in front. And Hashem comes, and the wheels fall off. Sheheser oifanayim in agalas, the wheels from the wagons from the chariots fell off. The naflu ha-Mitzrayim nishtabu. And the Mitzrayim fell down, and they broke. It was obviously a painful way to go. Hachamishi v'yinahageu b'kfedus. Hashem dealt with them in a heavy way. After they fell down, they hurt themselves, they couldn't get up. Hashem made them very heavy. The gravitational force pull was maybe even stronger than usual, and they were stuck where they fell. They wanted to run away, they had to get out of the Yam Suf, they couldn't. Let us run away from the Yidden. They were scared, but they couldn't run out because the water was coming behind them. And this is in contrast to Sisera, that's with Devorah, Shenemar Vayerid Sisera ala Merkav Vayonos Baragel. So Sisera was able to run away. So that's kind of like, I guess, some sort of chesed. It's definitely a chesed. Hashem gives the person the ability to run away. But when it came to the Egyptians, they fell down, they couldn't even run away. So that's how trapped they were. Hashvi, the seventh makkah, Vayinar Hashem es Mitzrayim b'soich hayam. Vayinar means like a dryer. The person like goes up and down. He's shaking them around in the yam. Kisargumai, as we're retargim v'shonik miloshin shever, like a lashon of breaking. Sheniram ka'adam sheminara sakdeir, like you're shaking out the contents of a pot. You're throwing it around back and forth. Mashal l'mayla l'mata, mashal l'mata l'mayla. Or maybe like we see in the fancy restaurants, they're flipping the food in the pan. And what's on top is going to the bottom, what's on the bottom is going to the top. So they're being put on the spin cycle in the washing machine. The ground of the sea of the Yam swallowed them up. As it says, the ground swallowed them up. So it's a good trivia question. When do we have two times in Chumash where the ground swallowed someone up? So we have by Koirach, and then we have now by the Mitzrim in the Yamsuf. She, the ninth Makkah, she yardu b'koivid the imke yom k'moyeferes, that they went down deep. Because normally a person's body would float to the top, but Hashem again made them heavy, and they sunk like oiferes, like lead. Shnemar tzolu koiferes b'mayim adirim. We say this every day. All this is from Az Yoshir, most of it. So tzolu koiferes b'madim. They went like oiferes, like lead, b'mayim in the water. And then there's a comma. Mishnah brings this down. There's a comma. Adirim means the strong ones. So we don't read it tzolu koiferes b'mayim adirim, that they were thrown down like lead in great waters. It's read tzolu koiferes, they were thrown down like lead, b'mayim in the water, comma, adirim, the great ones. So adirim is referring to the Egyptians, the great ones. There should be a pause between the word mayim and the word adirim. That's the Mishnah says. Ha'asiri, the 10th Makkah shapalta oisim hayam, that the yam, the sea, spit them out. They should have just sunk to the bottom and remained there, but the sea spit them out. As it says, Vayar Yisrael as Mitzrayim meis al sfas hayam. So the Yidden saw the Mitzrayim that they were dead on the bank of the sea. So that would, on the shore, that would indicate they were thrown out. So I guess why is that a makkah? If they were still alive, they were chucked down, they fell on the floor, and they died. If they're already dead, I guess it was still, it's a makkah, it's a bizayin to them. It's a bizayin to them that even after, if there was a certain, I guess maybe tznius, if the water swallows them up. I mean, for us, we have a din of kfuras Yisrael. We would like the person properly buried. Maybe they didn't have that din, and they wouldn't, that's such a law. They would have preferred to remain b'tznius in the ocean floor, to be thrown out, all these dead Egyptians. It's considered a makkah for them. So the major focus, the majority of these is a punishment. You see how strongly, difficultly, so to speak, Hashem dealt with the Mitzrayim, that those were the makkahs that they experienced on the Yom Suf. Okay, now Asar Nisyonis is an interesting one. And this is relevant to what we just named in Parshas Dvarim, and I want to do a comparative study over here. Asar Nisyonis Nisu Avaseinu as Hamakim Bamidbar. There were 10 tests that the Yidden tested Hashem. Each one was negative, right? Meaning we should not be testing Hashem. There were 10 times, the Mishnah says, that the Yidden tested Hashem. They complained, they said, we're not going to make it. Right? There's something wrong here, and they put an official complaint against Hashem. Each time, obviously, it was negative. The Mishnah brings the pasuk, Shenemar vayanasu oisi ze ese pa'amim v'lo yishama b'koyim. They tested me these 10 times, and they didn't listen to my voice. So we know that in the beginning of Parshas Dvarim, we just named the pasuk Elo Dvar Mashadiber Moshe El Kol Yisrael Be'ev Yarden. So it says Be'ev Hayar. These are the things that Moshe Rabbeinu said to Klal Yisrael. Then it lists 8 places, but it doesn't say what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Be'ev Yarden, Bamidbar Ba'arava Mosuf, Bein Paran, Bein Toifel, V'Loven, V'Chatzeres, V'Dizah. 8 places. So Rashi says that why list all these places, not tell us what Moshe Rabbeinu said? It's Toichecha. It's giving rebuke. Moshe Rabbeinu is rebuking Klal Yisrael for, this is his last speech, and he's going to die soon. So he's giving them Toichecha what they did. Rashi explains why did he wait, like Yaakov waited for the brothers. So these are all places that Moshe Rabbeinu was hinting to the Yidden when they did Averis. So it would be embarrassing for him to record outright, you did this, you did that, you did the other thing. So for the covet of the Jewish people, Moshe Rabbeinu just hinted it in these locations, in these places. But Rashi explains what was the test in each place. So there's only 8 over here, and there's 10 over here. I meant before the shift to figure out which 2 are missing. We'll do maybe together in the middle of the shift. Says the Rabbeinu, now the Rabbeinu Yona, the Mishnah doesn't list any of it, right? All these Mishnayos don't list any of the 10 things. That's Rabbeinu Yona is coming now in the 5th paragraph of Pirkei Avos, and he's listing for us the 10. So Harishan Sh'amru Hamibli Ein Kvar B'Mitzrayim. So this is back in Shmois Yud Daled. This is where they were by the Yamsuf. Yud Daled Yud Aleph. This is still back in Parshas Boy, right? This is the first time. They just had the 10 makas. They had the 10 makas. And Yud Daled Yud Aleph. Yud Daled Yud Gimel, sorry. Yud Daled Yud Aleph. The beginning of Parshas B'Shalach. Yeah. So what happens? The Mitzvah are running after them. Kol sus rechav paroi, in hot pursuit of the Yidden. And they're getting close. And they're getting scared. And they called out to Hashem. And they said, at least according to the Ramban, one group of the Yidden said, it's quite interesting. It's an example of sarcasm in the Torah. They say, was it due to a lack of graves, a lack of cemeteries in Mitzrayim that you took us out? It's interesting. I'm not sure where else we find sarcasm in the Torah. So it's interesting. It's tough at a time that they're under a lot of pressure. Why do this? Why do you do this to take us out of Mitzrayim? That's the first time. Now, let's see. Was that mentioned in Dvarim? So that one is actually not mentioned over here. Because Bamidbar is the next one. So what's number 2? Hasheni vayaloinu ha'am. When they complain to Moshe Rabbeinu, what are we going to be able to drink? Right, so this is Tesvav Chav Daled. This is after they already crossed the Yamsuf. Right, they just finished crossing the Yamsuf. Moshe takes them to Midbar Shore. They go 3 days without water. They came to Marasa. They couldn't drink the water. What are we going to drink? So they were complaining. Now again, it really depends how you ask it, right? So here, the verb is vayiloinu, right? They complain. If they would have said, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our master, please tell us, my kids are thirsty. What's the mahalach? What should we do? Then there wouldn't have been a problem. You're allowed to ask. You're encouraged to ask. But to complain, that's what the issue was. They complained. That was the second one. That's also not mentioned here in Parshas Dvar. The first one is Tez Zayin Gimel, which is coming up soon in the Rabbeinu Yona. So number 1 we had before they crossed the Yamsuf, and they go 3 days without water after the Yamsuf. That was number 2. The miracle happened that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to throw the tree into the water. In other words, a miracle had to happen. So, like we said before, they were not wrong in the content of what they said. It was the way in which they said it. Right? That was the problem, the way in which they said it. So he throws the 8s into the water. The 8s like Hashem, Hashem 8s. Moshe Rabbeinu cried out to Hashem. Hashem showed him the tree. And Chazal tell us in Maseches Pesachim, Daf Lamed Tes, she'oise 8s hardufni hayom shumar. Hashem instructed Moshe Rabbeinu to throw a bitter tree into the water. The hishtach mar b'mar, and they threw bitter and bitter, and it turned into a sweet tree, into sweet water. So to show the whole thing is the ma'amin teva. You're complaining, so fine, you're complaining against Hashem. So Hashem's going to show you. Hashem's going to throw a bitter tree into bitter water and make the water sweet. So we can never discuss this incident of Mara. I think I say it every year. There used to be this thing called Shal Shudas and Shul, if you remember. Go back deep to the of our memory. There used to be a thing called Shal Shudas and Shul. So whenever Parshas B'Shalach came, I think it happened twice in some year. So we always speak out this kotzker. The pasuk says they couldn't drink from the water, kimarim heim, because they are bitter. They were bitter. So pasuk pshat is the water was bitter. The Kotzker says because the Yidden were bitter. And the concept is if a person is himself bitter, if he's down, if he's always looking at the negative, he'll see the negative. If he's looking for the positive, often he'll see the positive. So you can have two people who go through the same experience. One of them comes out all farbis and all negative. One of them comes out positive. It's really how you look at it. Is the cup half empty, half full? There's a person who has a frum, unfortunately, it's a need for this, a frum rehab center. And they're a rabbi, and he tells the people who come to him, they live there, and he says, he gives them like a magnet or a sticker to put on the mirror in their bathroom. And you don't have to, but if you want to, here it is. And it says on the sticker, and these are people who are suffering from an addiction and trying to get out of it, it says, you're staring at the biggest problem of your day, that you're going to have today. Right? In other words, that the first step in a person growing is realizing that, I'm my biggest problem. Right? If I fix myself, I'll be okay. It's not him, and it's not her, it's not my parents, it's not my teachers, it's not this, definitely not the rabbi. Right? So it's not anyone else, it's really myself is really the source of the issue more often than not. So that is the first step in recovery. So that's exactly what the Kotzker is saying over here, that it was Kimar Mem, they were bitter. So that was number 2. And it's just fascinating that this is all like sandwiched in between the most unbelievable miracles, one could argue, that ever happened in the history of the world. It just had the 10 Makkos. They just saw what happened to all the Mitzrayim. That was the 10 Nisan that happened to the Jewish people in Mitzrayim. And they're coming out. But Lamaisa, they have the fear, and they still have that slave mentality, they have that fear, they're chasing them. So they go through the water, and they have these 10 miracles we read last time in the water. And they come out, in 3 days, no water. Again, there's a complaint. Number 3, we're not going to get through them all today, but we'll continue next week. But number 3, Bamidbar sin, Shesha'lu lechem, they ask for lechem. This is the first one, this is Bamidbar. And when it says in Dvarim, Eila Dvarim Shetiber Moshe Al Kol Yisrael Ba'eva Yarden Bamidbar, so Bamidbar is referring to this one in the Midbar sin. Sheshalu lechem, they ask for bread. Shedem b'shivteinu al sir habasa. De'evilem es aslav. So they asked for the bread, and they shouldn't have because they had money. But this is right after what happened with Mara. A few psukim later, they left Elim and they came to Midbar Sin. Vayelonu called Adas bnei Yisrael Moshe and Aaron Midbar vayomru mitem musen b'yad Hashem be'eretz Mitzrayim b'shivteinu al sir habasa. We would have rather died in Mitzrayim as we sit al sir habasa with all the bishmak and meat. That's what they complained about. And so they had 2 complaints. The complaint was we have nothing to eat and we want meat. So the first complaint of nothing to eat, that is a valid complaint. And therefore Hashem gave it to them at a good time of day. Rashi says later on, a good time of day, and munach b'kufs in a very nice way. But the meat, you only ask for meat. If a person's starving, he shouldn't be complaining he doesn't have meat. If he says, I don't have bread, that's a good taina. That's a good complaint. It's a good question. But to say, I'm starving, is there a steak I can have? That's not appropriate. And that's why Hashem gave him in a difficult part of the day, and to go out and hunt, Rashi says. That was the 3rd time they tested Hashem. They asked for the meat. Okay, we'll hold here. We did the first 3. We'll hold here. Next week we'll pick up with the rest, and we'll switch over now to Maseches Brachos. Let me just